From a methadone clinic in Cairns to a luxury rehab resort in Thailand, Carla Sherwood's career path proves that psychology skills travel anywhere and human struggles look surprisingly similar everywhere. Professionally Psyched is the podcast that brings you cutting-edge psychology research and real-world insights from our psych community of clinicians, researchers, and educators alike. In our special alumni spotlights, we chat to graduates from our psychology degree programs about how their skills learned in the classroom have become powerful tools supporting diverse career journeys and successes. Hi everyone and welcome to Professionally Psyched. I'm Jessica Muller, PhD candidate in Public Health at James Cook University, and before we get started we'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we record, and for me today that's the Bindal and Wulgurukaba peoples. And I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and cultures from wherever you may be tuning in from across the country. In this alumni spotlight, Dr. Amanda Krause speaks with Carla Sherwood, who journeyed from data entry to running a 5-star residential rehab and building an online psychology practice. Carla shares why her best career advice is to approach every opportunity like a sushi train and just try it all. So grab your headphones and get ready to get professionally psyched about getting your hands dirty in diverse settings. Enjoy.
Carla, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. To start, could you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Amanda, for having me. My name is Carla Sherwood. I am currently zooming in from Sunshine Coast. I actually run my business. I'm 5 years into my Sherwood Holistic Psychology business. And interestingly, I actually run my business 95% online. And I really specialize in the field of EMDR therapy. And so I work a lot with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, complex trauma, dissociation, and lots of different mental health issues, etc.
Yeah, and I imagine there's a couple steps between graduating as an undergraduate and now running your own practice. So could you take us on a little bit of the journey of how you've gotten to where you are today?
I'd love to, because it has been a wild, interesting ride. I did my fourth year of psychology in 2009. In 2010, I started in ATODS and mental health in Cairns with Queensland Health. But I actually started as a data admin assistant in a methadone clinic. For me, I was part-time data entry, and I just started applying for all the jobs that I could as a provisional psychologist with Queensland Health. Let's long story short it. So 2 years later, I got my foot in the door at ATODS as a provisional psychologist. And then it took me not 2 years, it actually took me 3 years to get registered. And that was fine because I did, between ATODS, I also did a year in community adult mental health services as well. So I became a registered psychologist 2014. Now then, life is life and things happen. And so I moved down to Brisbane and I worked in a group practice for a colleague that I'd met at a training. And so I did private practice for a year there. I came back to Cairns. So I came back to ATODS in Cairns, did another year there. And then, wild, right? I had amazing team leaders at the time that had gone over to Chiang Mai in Thailand because we had very much a group therapy intervention based at ATODS. It was quite leading in Queensland, actually. And they had gone over to Chiang Mai to this international residential rehabilitation program and met with the people that ran it to see what are they doing over there in this kind of like holistic setting. So they came back, blah, blah, blah. I happened to then be sitting next to someone whose friend worked over there. And then I was just the squeaky wheel and I was sending emails and I took my long service at the time. And then I was offered a job in Chiang Mai at this residential rehab. So I packed up my whole life here in Australia. I went traveling through South America for a couple of months and then landed in Thailand for a 6-month contract to work as a psychologist in a residential rehab that had 150 beds, a hospital on site. It looked like a 5-star kind of Bali resort. I went from ATODS in Cairns, really working with child safety, people in and out, guys in and out of prison, domestic violence, injecting people that were injecting drugs, homelessness, real crisis, real that. The next thing I was basically dealing with a lot of rich people that had a lot of addiction problems. And I was like, wow, it was such an amazing learning experience. So what was 6 months turned into 2 years. And then purely not because the world started to go nuts, as we all know, in early 2020, but for me, my time was just done and I was homesick. And so I moved back to Australia in 2020 to the Sunshine Coast. And then, no joke, I started working a stepping stone in another private practice, a group practice. By then, I had the vision that I was coming back. I wanted to start my own business and I wanted to go online. And then the whole world, we all went into lockdown 2 weeks later, which gave me lots of time to unpack my storage shed, which was great. and so I started very, very basic. Like, I mean, you see me now, I'm 5 years into business. Back then, I was like, Carla, see a client, charge a client, process a payment. I was like, wow, I had to design my own intake forms, get a basic website up and go. Like, it was a steep learning curve that year. I did 3 months at that other group practice, and then by June 2020, I was ready to launch solo. And so since then, I've never looked back. And that coincided with a very fast and steep EMDR therapy journey as well. So in that time, I'd done my first trainings in EMDR. I became an accredited practitioner. I did another couple of years to become an EMDR consultant. So I supervise a lot of people now for EMDR therapy. And then I became a facilitator for the EMDR Institute of Australia. And so I actually fly around the country now and helping deliver the trainings in EMDR therapy. I'm not a trainer, I'm a facilitator, but I love to help mental health professionals with EMDR. So that's how I got here.
There's so much in that journey, and I love that it's also an international journey.
Yes.
One of the things you just said was sort of the stark difference of moving from a place in Cairns and then being in Thailand. And I wondered if you could speak more about sort of the learnings that you were able to sort of apply and ground yourself moving from quite a different situation to another, and sort of how you made that all work in a foreign country.
So whilst I was in ATODS in Cairns, so along the way also, I had learnt CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy. I had learnt and trained in ACT therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy. I then had a lot of experience in DBT, dialectical behavioural therapy, plus meditation and mindfulness and all of that. So this job in Chiang Mai actually was very aligned in the fact it was a very holistic setting, which was not just the medical model. It was not just pharmacology. It was, you name it, and we had it there. There was a huge fitness center and a gym. They were doing sound bowls. They were doing trauma release exercises, art therapy, somatic healing, healthy eating, all of that, right? So coming back to your question, though, of how it was a huge adjustment, I got really nervous, to be honest with you, seeing like really wealthy clients. But you know what? Once I actually sat down with the person, and they might be these millionaire like CEOs running these large businesses, but then bottom liner, you know what they were struggling with? I drink too much. I'm fighting with my daughter. My daughter doesn't respect me. I'm fighting with my partner. I was like, oh, I know this stuff. Oh, I'm struggling to regulate my emotions. I don't know how to manage my stress. I have a bucket load of trauma that I haven't dealt with. Right, okay, let me help you. Let me help you help yourself, of course, right? So once I realized, I suppose, and when I say addiction, I really mean compulsive self-soothing behaviors. But why I'm saying that is I'm not talking alcohol and drugs only. I'm talking spending, gaming, love and sex addiction, porn, binge eating, food issues, food and body issues. So you name it, but the 101 beautiful different ways that people cope in unhelpful ways and unhealthy ways, but they cope to survive. And so once I realized that stuff doesn't care how much money you have in the bank or how big your house is or how many cars you have or don't have, and it just comes down to, the same stuff, I was like, oh, right, this doesn't discriminate no matter what country you're from, no matter what, So once I realized that, I was like, wow, this really is the psychology of people, no matter all walks of life.
Yeah. And you mentioned there you had by that time had these, trainings in ACT and CBT and all of that, but I wondered if you might be able to reflect on maybe some of the knowledge or the skills that you gained in undergrad that you used then and maybe even still do and sort of have brought through your career with you that really make a difference in what you do.
What I loved, like some of my favorite subjects, sociology, the behavioral, conditioned behavioral subjects, personality was one of my favorite subjects. Stats wasn't a favorite, I can tell you that. Glad to those people that specialize in that, though. We need the researchers and we need the people that are really good at stats. It wasn't something I was amazing at, I can tell you. But even Psych 101, what do we say? It teaches you not what to think, but how to think, and to just be open-minded and aware of a lot of different things and to see the bigger picture as well. And then, of course, just the other stuff, but it is super important on writing professionally and making sure you reference where stuff comes from, like just that kind of stuff. I remember criminology was another one of my favorites. And it was like then really, boom, mind blown in terms of just thinking about, I remember one of my big learning moments was just because someone said that they saw something doesn't mean that it happened because of perception, and we're all looking through our own lenses of life. So I think a lot of that is the stuff that, is real gold.
And I think that's really important. What you just said is, okay, you didn't necessarily gravitate towards the research, but you learned how to find information. You learned how to write professionally and use the evidence base to do the work that you're doing, right? So I think it's really important to highlight that maybe you weren't going on a career journey towards being a researcher, but there's still use out of those subjects that maybe we don't always love.
Absolutely, you're right. What I do know is where to find research. When I do run workshops, I'll say, like, guys, this is going to be a more practical workshop. However, please see my detailed reference list that I have attached with my favorite books and research. This is where you can go to get the specific research in this field.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that work that you do in facilitating EMDR therapy, because I know that a lot of clinicians who I've spoken to and, colleagues that we have are sort of gravitating towards this as a therapy currently with a lot of different clients.
So EMDR therapy is absolutely booming. Why is it so good? Because evidence-based but because it is so effective. EMDR therapy is around resolving past traumatic memories. So we have a saying that we say, resolve the memories, resolve the psychopathology. I like to use a tree analogy, and I can say there can be 101 different flowers and branches and leaves, which can be anxiety, depression, OCD, binge eating disorders, addiction, insomnia, ADHD, you name it, all the phobias, all of that stuff, right? If we really tunnel them down, the trunk of the tree, I kind of think of it like adult onset trauma. Then you've got the roots of the tree, which we're getting into childhood trauma, and then the deeper roots, which is transgenerational trauma, right? The reason that EMDR is so effective is because we focus on the person and the memories. So we come away from what's wrong with you to what happened to you. Now we're not just looking at present moment symptoms. We're not just going, let's put a Band-Aid on that. Let's just fix the problem at the present. We're going, where did you first learn this? What happened to you? Where did this come from? So actually, it's like we're doing the deepest surgery to remove the cyst, if you like, rather than just scraping a bit off the top and putting a nice bandage on it and going, you'll be right for another couple of weeks or months or whatever.
Yeah. One of the questions that I've been asking people is sort of think about like what a big issue that you see is out there now as we think our current students are going to graduate and might be able to sink their teeth into and help tackle.
If I'm thinking about that, like on a larger scale, it's trauma, and I want to clarify what I mean by trauma, because gee whiz, when I was an undergrad, I think, trauma, we think war, we think physical or sexual assaults, bombings and things like that. But actually, when we come to think of trauma as adverse life events, anything that has a negative impact on the psyche, trauma can be, when I was 10 years old, I took my maths test home and said, hey, mum and dad, look, I got an 8 out of 10. And dad said, but you didn't get a 10. And I go, as a 10-year-old, I'm stupid. I'm not good enough. And so that can be the catalyst of a I'm not good enough story that develops, right? So again, when we're looking at it like, where's the memories of you not being good enough? Where's the memories where you felt like an imposter? Oh, well, in grade 11, I did an English presentation and I made a mistake and the class laughed at me. So now, as a walking, talking 35-year-old adult, I have a fear of public speaking, It's like, where did that come from? So if we go back and resolve the memory, then we can, help people resolve their psychopathology, resolve the symptoms. And I just want to say too, I think, there's a lot of things that you guys will be dealing with later, just things like vaping, the phones, as in phones are literally creating, like it's like ADHD on a societal level, if you like. Like phones are designed to start giving our minds and brains, very limited attention spans and things like that. Not being grounded. People are busy. When are people stopping and being in their bodies? People a lot of time aren't feeling their feelings. I just think on a larger scale, there's going to be this kind of stuff and all of that. So there's a lot of that stuff.
So I guess my last question for you is just, what advice do you have for students?
One of the best things that I did, and it was a game changer for me, I went and did a lifeline telephone counselling course. And basically it was like getting on the phone and volunteering my time, but to answer calls from around Australia, crisis. And I mean, if that wasn't a jumping in and really getting some on-the-job experience is in a nutshell. If you can get into, some NGOs, go and volunteer in different places. And I also would say, go and get your hands dirty, say yes to everything. It's like Sushi Train. Try it all. Try it all so that you really have a wealth of different experiences, because your niche areas and areas of interest and passion will develop and change and evolve along the way. I didn't know back then that I loved EMDR therapy. I didn't know I was going to specialize in trauma. I didn't know that I would love working with addictions and compulsive self-soothing. So just space and grace, guys, space and grace. Go get on the job. Don't think either that there's one and only pathway.
Absolutely. And I mean, what better analogy to end on than a sushi train? So, Carla, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It's been awesome talking to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda, for the opportunity, and best wishes on the journey, everyone. Just do your best. That's all we can do.
Thanks for listening to Professionally Psyched. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the ongoing support of our Psych community. If you'd like to show your support, or if you want us to cover anything on the pod, reach out via our emails, and don't forget you can listen to full episodes on Spotify.